I work as a public information officer for the Game and Parks Commission, and as part of that, I'm a regional editor for Nebraskaland magazine. Just a great publication, and as you can see, 100 years of history with that publication. This is one of those presentations that you have almost too much information to work with, and I figure I'll probably spend about 20 minutes per decade, so I should have everybody out of here in 4 hours or so. So sit tight. If you guys could lock the doors to make sure nobody leaves early, I'd appreciate it. So, no, it's an honor to speak for the Dorset Graves Lecture Series. I was working at Chadron State College when the lecture series got started. I remember even covering a presentation that Dorset Graves did. He spoke about Shakespeare that night, I remember. My presentation will not be quite as highbrow as that, but I hope you come away with something anyway from it. So I want to give a thanks. Like Alex said, I had the pleasure of working here at Chadron State College and worked in college relations. Got to work with Alex and Daniel and Tina, and really appreciate all the great work they do getting the information out about this fine institution. So really thankful for the invitation to be here. This, of course, my roots in my career are here at Chadron State, going back to my college days. Here I am at the old Eagle newspaper in the Klein Center with one of my favorite teachers of all time, Levita Dickinson, for sure. She was a great advisor for the Eagle newspaper. Taught Alex and Daniel and I and Tina and so many others how to do journalism. I'm looking over one of her copies of the Eagle there that she'd take her red pen and mark all over it each week after we did our stories and everything. So learned a lot from her. And this photo is also special to me because the guy who took that photo sitting up here in the second row, Con Marshall, he was doing a story on her at the time. So I got to work with Con Marshall. I worked beside him both when I was working at the Chadron Record and here at Chadron State College. So yeah, that's kind of the roots of my journalism career right there. Okay, now we're going to get into my actual presentation about Nebraskaland magazine. And to talk about Nebraskaland magazine, we need to step back a little bit, even farther than 100 years, and we'll go back to the 1800s. And late 1800s, early 1900s, when we had Euro-American expansion coming across the United States. And, you know, it was a time of great growth for the United States, but it was also a devastating time for a lot of our natural resources. And as you can see here, we have a picture of some of these outdoorsmen and their pursuits. And through that period, we lost 940 million acres of virgin forest by 1850. Incredible number. White-tailed deer numbers went from an estimated 30 million down to 300,000 by 1900. Then you go up here to the Canada geese, which as many of them as there are now, it's hard to believe this, but they were nearly extinct. They went from 25 million to be near extinction. And perhaps the saddest of all, this big pile of bison skulls here we see, the American bison, 30 to 60 million to less than 100 by 1902. So just an incredible loss. So it was a real sad part of our history. But then we move on to this next slide, and we have a few people who had a little different way of thinking. Some of these outdoorsmen. Here's our 26th president of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt. With his quote, "There can be no greater issue than that of conservation in this country." And his tour guide there at Yosemite, what would become Yosemite National Park, John Muir, "In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks." That's a quote I think of quite a bit when I get out and take photos. And then we have Aldo Leopold, considered to be the father of wildlife ecology and conservation, and the author of the Sand County Almanac. A conservationist is one who is humbly aware that with each stroke of the axe, he is writing his signature on the face of the land. So those were some of the ways of thinking. And then we also have this guy, George Carter, and a lot of people probably don't know who that is, at least I didn't until this year. Bookham, I don't know if he said that or not, but he was actually one of the first 4 game wardens for the Game Commission, or what would become the Game and Parks Commission. So this is him. He's sitting next to 537 quail and 36 prairie chickens that he confiscated from a train in December 1902. And that would have come after the Lacey Act, a very important piece of legislation in our history of conserving wildlife. So that was a big part of wildlife conservation, was getting those game wardens, and a little different way of thinking. We're also going to talk a little bit about the drivers of society and fashion in the early 21st century, in the early 20th century, I should say. You got your outdoor life and Field and Stream doing lots of cool things, and the society and fashion side of it, you got Life and Saturday Evening Post and Harper's Bazaar and McClure's. Print was king back then. Radio was just coming on a little bit, but everybody was reading newspapers, and especially getting a lot of their society from these magazines that were coming out at the time. And then we have this one, and this is not Nebraskaland magazine, you notice, but this is our first issue of our publication, Outdoor Nebraska. You can see it there with the kid fishing on the front with a stick pole there, and the fellow there that started this was Frank O'Connell. He would go on to be the director of the agency. He was a mover and a shaker back in the day. Really interesting character, but this was something that he started up. So a lot of the other states were starting magazines, and he started up this one, and I think it was 16 pages, the first one, and there was a lot of excitement throughout the state. This made headlines throughout Nebraska with this new magazine that was coming out. And I'll read this article from the Hastings Tribune, that the one in the middle there. "See Nebraska first" is an excellent slogan, and fortunate is he who adopts it. There are many nooks and corners in this state, especially in the Northwest, that are more picturesque than the average Nebraskan ever dreamed of. There are beautiful valleys and deep canyons and bubbling springs and rippling rills, low rolling, as well as high, rugged hills with striking backgrounds of forest. Its rivers, its lakes teeming with fish of various kinds to entice the anglers from every direction. The Department of Agriculture of this state has issued through its Bureau of Game and Fish its first number of Outdoor Nebraska, which is printed for the purpose of informing the sportsmen and citizens that, oh boy, this is tough. The outdoor line, yes, what is happening on the outdoor line? And to inculcate a greater appreciation for the wildlife and natural beauty of Nebraska. It goes without saying that its work will not be in vain. The initial number of Outdoor Nebraska is a credit to those having it in charge, and will play a big part in the preservation of the fish and game of this state. So that was one of the articles that come out. I had a hard time reading that. That's a lot smaller on this computer than I thought it would be. But anyway, that kind of shows the excitement of this publication that was bragging about Nebraska. From that first issue, we see a great desire to gain public lands. We didn't have a lot of them in the state at the time, for sure, not near as many as what we have now, and we still don't have as many as a lot of other states do. But this is what the editor, Frank B. O'Connell, one of the quotes from this article: "The people of the Middle West are just now awakening to the fact that unless something is done, and done quickly, the wildlife and natural beauty of this prairie will have vanished before the ever-grasping hand of commerce." So it's always been a kind of a cheerleader for our public lands and our fish and wildlife. And as that article said, we have some great areas up here in the Northwest. That hasn't changed. And with cameras coming to be more prevalent at that time, you had 35 millimeters even coming on board, and people had Brownie cameras, so people were taking more pictures at this time. This was in June of 26 is when our magazine started. This cover from July of 1933 is a familiar scene from Chadron State Park, and at the time Outdoor Nebraska started, Chadron State Park would have been 5 years old, so there was still a lot of excitement about Chadron State Park, and each issue from those early days had a lot of mentions of Chadron State Park and encouraging people to come out and check it out. And so they were able to show some of these beautiful places in photographs that a lot of people in the eastern part of the state didn't even know existed. The first issues of this magazine were distributed to all of the members of the Isaac Walton Club. That was a big conservation group at the time. Still exists, but not as big of a conservation group in Nebraska as it was at one time. But back then there were a lot of Isaac Walton groups, and one of their big projects was Walgren Lake, getting Walgren Lake going. There are reports in the early magazines about Walgren Lake. That's one of the articles I have up there. The Isaac Walton League local chapter worked hard on getting that going. You can see Crow Butte, one of my favorite things to photograph. There it is in the upper right-hand corner. I think that's probably the first picture that appeared in the magazine of it. It tells of the battle between the Crow and the Sioux. I recently did an article on it. It took me 4 or 6 pages to do it, and they did it with one picture and a couple sentences. So they're much more efficient than I am, for sure. So, like I say, a lot of the artwork in these early issues, the commission by that time, or the agency, had been stocking fish, so there was a lot of pictures of people holding fish, and that's bragging about all the great fishing in the state. And there were conservation messages too, like this one on the right here. Each publication early on they put a cartoon on the back, and this is one of them, 4 public enemies of wildlife. And boy, they did not like free roaming cats back then. It seemed like they were going after the free roaming cats in about every publication. So a lot of fish stocking reports were big, telling everybody how many fish they put around the state, talking about a lot of those different projects. So we're skipping ahead a little bit here. This is still Outdoor Nebraska. This fella, C.G. Bud Pritchard, joined the staff in 1949, and he worked for the agency until 1974. So this was before we had the big zoom lenses and everything. We weren't taking close-up wildlife shots. So this fella, he did drawings, and just some great, you can see these covers, and anytime there was a natural history article on an animal, he usually had a drawing that he put with it. And I've read about him, and what's fascinating is, back then, artists didn't have a lot of photo references to go off of when they were doing this kind of artwork. And as they said, he was able to draw and paint a lot of these animals from memory. He knew them well enough that he was able to do that. So really incredible artwork, really fun to look over some of those old covers for sure. Then we're moving up to 1958. There's a piece of Bud Pritchard artwork there. That is one serious cottontail with his ears pinned back, and he means business, and he's here to tell us that we're now a monthly publication. Prior to that, we were just quarterly, Outdoor Nebraska, so we moved on to be a monthly publication then, and since we were publishing more often, we were able to explore more diverse wildlife, I suppose, such as the one on the right there. We were able to feature the monster of Walgren Lake, which is probably one of our most popular covers of all time. And the water's low over there, but I think it's still there. The critter's still out there. I've been trying to get a picture of it for quite a while. So, And now we're going to move on forward to 1964. And now you see the Nebraskaland name. And that is the first year that we were Nebraskaland. You can see the news article there on the left, bigger and better than ever. This was when the agency took tourism under its wing. And we had, Frank Morrison was the governor at the time, and this was a big push big marketing push statewide to show off Nebraskaland and Outdoor Nebraskaland. So the magazine, you can see the publication that Frank Morrison's looking over the shoulder of that lady they're looking at has a 12-page spread on the Capitol on it. So it's not all hook and bullet stuff anymore. There was a lot more tourism type information. So really interesting. Our editor, he kind of refers to this as our hippie years. You're going in, you got a lot of nice colors there on the front. So yeah, it's a really interesting time for the magazine. They also doubled the size of the magazine at that time too. So it went over 60 pages, turned into a really big thing. And yeah, that's where it really took off at that point, I think. Toadstool through the years. Actually, I was just looking for different covers, and I'm like, oh, there's a Toadstool cover, there's a Toadstool cover, there's a Toadstool cover. So we're very fortunate to have Toadstool Park here, and I spend quite a bit of time up there myself taking pictures, and have through the years. It's a photographer's wonderland. That first one is what Nebraskaland, this is the Nebraskaland I grew up with. First one would have been 79 there. I would have been in first grade, 1991 in the middle. That's when I was graduating high school. And this will be an appropriate time to introduce my wife over here, Cricket. 2000, when we were, that would have been June. That would have been about the time we were moving back up here to Chadron and starting work she was working at the Fred Lockwood Company downtown, and I was working with Con at Chadron State College. So that's what Toadstool Park looked like then. Yeah, so through the years, oh, we got more Toadstool pictures. Here's 2013. That was the year I started the magazine. And with our latest masthead, there it is, just I think in 24 maybe. So yeah, there's always, as long as there's a Nebraskaland magazine, I'm sure we'll have pictures of Toadstool and many other pretty places. So yeah, that's kind of skimming over what the magazines looked like through the years. All right, here we go. This is, I believe this picture was, Bud Pritchard probably was in Sparks Hall when he drew this, because this, it kind of resembles me, what I look like in about 2013. I don't remember putting my feet on the desk very often, and I didn't wear a tie very often, but the desk and the chair's similar, and I didn't smoke a pipe a lot, but I did have those dreams of catching fish and hunting and everything. So that's about the time that I had learned that Game and Parks had an opening. But before that, I actually, as Tina does and everybody else here at the college, working in college relation, they attend a lot of events. And I attended quite a few speeches on campus and everything. Well, Michael Forsberg was one of the speakers, and it wasn't for the Graves Lecture Series, it was for the Pilster Lecture Series, I believe, that they had at the Sandow Society put on down here at Memorial Hall. And so I attended that, and I remember he had just such a great, he started in Nebraskaland and has done great things. He's one of Nebraska's great, best-known photographers. Has done wonderful things with Platte Basin time lapse and all this stuff. But I remember going to that, and I was just so touched by how he used imagery to deliver a message of conservation. So I attended that event and wrote up the story, and then about the same time, the wildlife management program was getting going here at the college. So one of the things I got to do was go out with them. They had a wildlife short course. It was Teresa Zimmerman at the time, Teresa Frank now. She led that, and I remember Greg Schinbeck's out here. He was one of the speakers for that, I remember. And so I remember just becoming really interested in that, and didn't really think much had come of it. But then I paid off my student loans at about that time, so I went out and bought a 500 millimeter lens, hit the back roads, and took as many wildlife pictures as I could just for fun and everything. And then, lo and behold, they tell me this job opens up for Game and Parks, and kind of put all these interests. I wasn't really looking to leave the college, but it just seemed like too good of a thing to pass up. So that's how I kind of got into the gig. There's the story about Michael Forsberg there that I wrote, and the pictures I took of him. And I remember during that presentation, at the end, he showed this picture of a mountain lion. I thought, man, that is cool. He got that with a camera trap, and he talked about setting up that image and everything. And I thought, man, that is the most amazing thing ever. So yeah. Anyway, that was an important part of becoming an employee of Game and Parks. So when I got my job, I go to Lincoln and go to orientation and everything, and they hand me a stack of these babies. And I'd seen most of these through the years, and it was kind of like, well, this is the type of work we expect from you, you know. And so looking through these publications, and I didn't speak, I kind of glazed over that era of the magazine, but that 70s through the 90s was really a great era for photography. And my predecessor, Bob Greer and Alliance, took some amazing photographs through the years, as did John Farrar. Eric Fowler, who is one of our graduates from Chadron State, one of our distinguished young alums here. He's not so young anymore, but he's a distinguished young alum. Great, he's been a great mentor, still on staff with us, great photographer. So yeah, just really high standards. And I remember looking through some of these publications and thinking, man, I don't know if I can do that. Those are some amazing photographs. But you know, what I learned is that, and they were pointed out, is that surveys show that people look at our magazine for the photographs. So somebody's gonna take nice photographs for that magazine, whether it's me or somebody else. So I'm very fortunate in that I live in a great place to do that sort of thing. And I tell people that all the time. Any success I've had as a photographer is more about where I live than any skills I have with a camera. So I'm just very fortunate to be around all these great places and things. Like I say, it was the wildlife that kind of drove me to this position. Here's 1933 at the left. I believe that is the first cover photograph of a wildlife on the cover of the magazine, a coyote, and they got underneath it says the Raider there, and so he's got something in its mouth. There in the middle, that was the magazine from the month that I was born, November of 1972. So that's a good old Pine Ridge wild turkey on the cover of that one, and then that one on the right, that's one of my pictures from more recent years for a story I did about bighorn sheep. So this is my happy place. This is what I love to do more than anything. Get out and set up a blind and either say grouse, swift fox, or alongside a lake or a pond or something and see what shows up. These are a few of the different, or a couple of the different blinds I use. Well, three, I guess. The one in the middle is a PVC frame that I built, and I throw grass sheets over the top of it and kind of make a cave to crawl in. Can take that out and set it up in a lot of places. It's more of a set it up for a few weeks sort of thing. The one on the right is kind of a similar type of concept, but it's a one that sets up real quick and you can take it down real fast. Love that blind a lot. And the one on the left there, that's one that I just recently got last year and started using a little bit. It's a floating blind that you can walk around in, but kind of you stand inside of it and walk around in the water in the shallows. So camping, best way to get good pictures of wildlife is be there early or late. And so a lot of times I try to camp on site, and so usually take the old tent out. Most important thing in that bottom right picture is probably the propane coffee pot. Got to have that for sure. So, yeah. So yeah, this is what Eric Fowler says. He's been a great mentor to me, and he said he likes to use some of these, it's almost cliches, or the harder you work, the luckier you get, you're not trying to get a shot of a certain bird, you're trying to get the shot of a certain bird. You want it to be good enough that people will use it in their brochures or whatever else, and it looks good in the magazine, looks good in print, really good in focus. So these are just some of the animals, that I have gotten to cross paths with, the osprey, the shoveler, the bighorn sheep, the Blanding's turtle, willets, swift fox, good old rattlesnake, all creatures big and small, dragonfly. A lot of times people ask me what my favorite one is to photograph. Whatever's in front of the camera, I have about as much fun. I love taking pictures of those of conservation, those in conservation need, because I know that people want those and they like having them. But I can have just as much fun taking pictures of those dark-eyed juncos in the backyard, or garter snakes or whatever else. So it's all fun to me. And we don't always get to be there when the animals are. We have a lot of nocturnal animals that are hard to photograph sometimes. This is my camera trap setup. It's a camera that has it's almost like a moving studio with 3 flash units and a sensor off the camera that you set up. It takes quite a while. Here you can kind of see the setup. I got it in one place there by a cliff. The other place is over here by Briggs Pond. It's close to my house and a nice little testing spot for me when I'm trying to set this stuff up. So, and here's a few of the residents of Briggs Pond that get pictures of a nice little chorus line of skunks come down through there. So really a fun picture. I have gotten so many pictures of skunks, but this one's a keeper. A lot of them I throw away, but yeah, you never know. It's like that's an all right skunk picture. So yeah. Sometimes get pictures during the day, golden eagles, beaver by a log. I like to set it up on beaver dams. And occasionally get pictures of our 2 wildcat species in the state. So, that's trying to get pictures of mountain lions. There's a few that I've gotten through the years with that camera trap setup. Like I said, when watching that speech of Michael Forsberg's, I thought, man, if I could ever get one picture of a mountain lion, I would jump for joy. I've been fortunate. I've gotten quite a few now, so been very rewarding to get out and do that. That bobcat, that handsome bobcat, that one was good enough to make the cover of the magazine even. So, pretty places. That is the other thing we like to take pictures of, and like I say, we have a lot of them out here. Some of you might know where this is. That was a spring issue of 1954. That is Pants Butte Road in Sioux County, one of my favorite drives. The pants hadn't fallen down yet over there yet, I believe, in 1954. It looks like they're still standing. But that photo on the right, that is taken from about the middle of that picture, that cover, or that scene, and that was my first landscape photo to appear in Nebraskaland magazine. So that's kind of a special one to me, and I cannot tell you how many sunrises and sunsets and I've been out and witnessed since then. But it's always when it works out, it's always worth getting up and staying out late for. Whether it's the fog hanging over the sand hills, the northern lights over the Badlands over in Sioux County, the cold water streams rushing. One night I was camping down at Crescent Lake and that lightning came. Just a great piece of serendipity there. Sun shining over the blooming yuccas, and you got the Milky Way and Crow Butte. Like I said, Crow Butte's always good for a photo. Smith Falls, moon hanging over. I'm very fortunate to have all these buttes out here and stuff to get the full moon, pictures of the full moon. So yeah, just endless, such a diverse landscape out here in western Nebraska that I get to photograph. And it isn't always, have you ever seen the old Ansel Adams picture where he's standing on top of his truck and getting pictures? And I did that quite a bit with my truck, trying to get a better angle on things. When I first started working for the agency, I went, occasionally fisheries would contract an airplane for us to go take pictures of their projects. So I'd get up and go up in an airplane and take pictures and get aerial photos that way. We had like mule deer surveys and a helicopter, went up on that. About lost my cookies a few times doing that. With our landscape, sometimes it's just, you get so much better perspective. You're always trying to get a better perspective on things, and to get up above it is a lot of times the best way to do that. Of course, drones have come on the scene now, and so I am one of 3 licensed drone pilots in the communications division, to commercially licensed to do that sort of thing. And it's you have to get a special occasion permit to do that on most Nebraska Game and Parks properties. Since I work for Game and Parks, it's part of my job to get that imagery. So I feel very fortunate that I'm able to get video and photos of these places like Saddle Rock over at Fort Robinson, be able to get Crawford in the background. And one landform there at the top right that I've always struggled getting pictures of, which is kind of a cool one, is Round Top over in Sioux County. And so being able to get up a little bit higher and show some of that cool landscape around it. Down there at the bottom right is a Smiley Canyon, which I did a story on a while back. That's the scenic drive now that goes through Fort Robinson State Park, and it used to be the main highway. Highway 20 went through there, and it ate a whole bunch of vehicles as they come in from the west. A lot of times they'd lose control. They didn't realize what they were coming into, and so it had a lot of wrecks down through the years. So being able to use a drone and get up a little bit higher and show how that road actually goes down through the park there really helps. And bottom left, Smith Lake, WMA, working on some stories about it. And I got all these old newspaper clippings of Smith Lake going way back, and they're talking about tree planting projects back then and how much they put into that. So it's so cool. And I think you can kind of tell in this photo that all those cedars and pines that they put in there, they put in rows, so you can see that when you get up above, you can actually see the tree planting effort that they put into that. So cool stuff. Love that. Also, we have outdoor fun. About anything that goes on in the outdoors is fair game for Nebraskaland. I had to throw that cover of my son up there to show that, kids fishing is still a thing, even since the first issue. That was the first picture that was on the first issue of the magazine. And when I got hired, they said, don't worry about, just put as many pictures of your kids in as you want. I think it might have helped me get hired because I had a couple of built-in models there with me. So yeah, there's my daughter in the upper right. She was a little disappointed that she didn't get on the cover at the time, I think. But that picture, I think, has been more places than the one of Sawyer on that cover, because I know it was on the actual Game and Parks website for a long time. When you went to buy a fishing license, that was the photo that you saw. But yeah, you got the hiking and the cabin. You got Randy Burke over here riding his bicycle on our new trail, the Cowboy Trail Connection out here. Took some pictures of them this fall. I got Mel Ninneman there hunting in the sand hills, and the weekly rodeos at Fort Robinson. So just, it's all about outdoor fun and getting outdoors and I submitted an article, it'll come up in the May issue, about disc golf. So went out and photographed the guys who meet out there weekly playing disc golf. So all sorts of interesting stuff. And here are the people who do so much of the important work for our agency, a lot of our conservation projects. We got bighorn sheep capture there in the middle. releasing the bighorn sheep. We got wild turkeys and mountain lion kittens, and you got trout. They're tagging there in Bordeaux Creek. Al and Joe there up on Soldier Creek. Don't allow vehicles up there, so I rode in on mules with those guys to get that picture. Follow people around with telemetry units a lot as they're tracking animals. Still stocking fish. Game and Park still stocks an incredible amount of fish, so get pictures of them doing that. Pheasants for youth season out here at Bordeaux, releasing pheasants, and the important work of prescribed fire too. So just, all sorts of, that's just a fraction of it, but a lot of great work that Game and Parks does in the conservation realm. And you go out and you shoot all these pictures, and eventually you come back and you look at them, you put them all in, and you try to put them together into these articles, and they come in handy. And these are just a few Pine Ridge themed articles that I've done in recent years. So that's my son and I backpacking the Pine Ridge Trail, or my Pine Ridge special fishing rod I wrote about, or Greg out there helped me with an article about preserving the Pine Ridge and all the work of the thinning going on there, and the buttes of the breakout, more of a historical piece about the Cheyenne breakout and the scenic buttes there. So just, like I said, the range of things I get to write about. Like this, for the May issue, I said I had an article about disc golf. I also have one about the tin thistle species in Nebraska too. So, quite a difference there, but it's all about the outdoors and our natural resources and parks, and so all good stuff. Of course, the magazine isn't the only place that these photos get used. We have guides and reports and all sorts of stuff. People in the agency are putting out a lot of information, and they like to have imagery to do it. News releases like the one there, Smith Falls, or our social media, very popular, all our social media accounts. Some of the most popular things on social media are the pictures from out here in the West, because people like to see Nebraska that way. Lower left-hand corner there, we partner with folks like the Nebraska, tourism isn't under Game and Parks anymore, but we partner with them to do a lot of the photography. That's from when my daughter and I got to ride in a hot air balloon to photograph hot air balloons. So that's how we got the cover of the tourism guide for the state that year. So just lots of incredible stuff. We shoot more video these days. We're doing more of that with our cameras. All sorts of vehicles to get information out these days. I showed you a picture of a rabbit earlier. This is what I call the rabbit hole. The archives, they're online. If any of you want to go and look at any of those old Nebraskalands, as of last week, they were on there up to the 70s. Now they're up there all the way to modern, this decade anyway. I think maybe the last one even might be up there too. So those are free to look at. There's a QR code that'll take you right to it. Like I say, it's a rabbit hole though. Give yourself some time, because it's too much fun to go look at all those old magazines for sure. And this is one of the new things we've added, shopnebraskaland.com. Get a lot of requests for prints. A lot of those are getting put on this site, so people can just order whatever size of print they want and order it straight from there. And for the 100th anniversary, a lot of our old covers, a lot of those cool Bud Pritchard covers and stuff are available on there as prints, so people can order those and make a nice thing to put on a wall for sure. All right, and this one, I'm gonna briefly talk about the media landscape and AI and how AI has come on to things, and we're at a point now, I think, where people don't know what's real and what isn't anymore, and you're seeing that a lot with the photos. This is one of my camera trap photos that I got over at Ponderosa WMA of a curious little mule deer fawn there, but that got posted on social media a while back, and comments were made, oh, that is so fake, it looks like it was taken in a studio or something, you know, and so yeah, I had to kindly get on there and tell the person how I drug all this camera equipment over a bunch of down timber and set it up and put all this work into getting this image, but yeah, that's a real image, and so, you know, we have taken a pretty hard line with Nebraskaland. We've had a lot of discussions, and we're not allowing AI content to be, you know, we're trying to build trust with the public. So in our writing or our photography, unless it's really labeled that it is such, that it is. So yeah, if you see anything with our names on it, you can guarantee that it's authentic. All right, so I'm going to end this presentation where we started it. I actually wrote up this part because I wanted to get it right. All right, so I want to start with the trees, the geese, the deer, and the bison, but I'll switch to just a few of the many photos that I've been fortunate enough to capture of these subjects. I often count my blessings each time I get to point my camera at our wildlife and scenery, with thanks to those who have worked to keep them around. May we never take them for granted. These days, it seems some people don't fully appreciate our public lands and wild things and are okay with, quote, the prairie vanishing before the ever-grasping hand of commerce, quote, as Frank O'Connell wrote in that first issue of the magazine in 1926. Perhaps they don't recognize the immeasurable value in catching a sunrise or sunset among the grasslands, sandhills, and pines, the endless stars, or the Milky Way that hang over our wide open lands on a cloudless evening, a day of catching fish from a boat atop the ice or along the bank of a cold water stream, pursuing pheasants, grouse, turkey, or other game on a beautiful autumn day, loading up the fam for a picnic in the park or hiking or biking on our trails. We'll keep working to show you the value in these priceless things in print, digital, audio, video, and whatever else the future may bring for Nebraskaland. As that Hastings newspaper reporter pointed out when announcing the birth of Outdoor Nebraska, it is work that will not be in vain. Thank you for coming tonight, and be sure to take some time to be wild. As we at the Game and Parks like to remind you, time outdoors is time well spent.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Would love to open it up to some questions if you have any.
Just out of curiosity, I noticed that some of the earlier copies were 15 cents and then it was 25 cents. Do you know what the price has gone from over 100 years?
Oh man, what are we at now? I do not. It's around $3. Let me see here. Let me see if I can get that cover up here. I don't think it's gone up recently. Oh, there's one. No, we don't even put the price on it. I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, sorry. I think we're over $3 now. Yeah. Yes, Pablo.
You were talking about how back then they didn't have the long distance lens, so they couldn't get close-up shots. When did they get or start to get close-up shots? These animals, like when did that happen?
Yeah, I think you saw more of that coming in the 70s. I noticed a lot of those publications, and I'm not sure when our staff got them, but I know that's when a lot of the wildlife pictures were really starting to show up, you know, 60s, 70s, late 60s, early 70s. You saw some of that coming in. You know, and that was, like I say, in the 30s, it was such an advancement, because before that they had the big boxes, you know, that they carried around and everything. So that, and then they brought in the smaller cameras. So yeah, that's when you started seeing more of the wildlife pictures show up in the 70s era.
Loida used to say film is cheap. What do you do with your photos that don't appear?
Yeah, you know, culling and captioning is the biggest part of the job, probably. I mean, going out and getting the images is one thing. That takes planning and whatnot. But that's where the real work begins, is back at the computer. So we, you know, go through, probably save maybe 20% of the images that we shoot at a given time. And we have to take, all the plant species, wildflowers, whatever else. We put scientific names with those, caption them so they're all searchable. Try to think of everything a person might be searching for when they're looking for that image, and we upload them to a database that everybody can get to it through that archive link that I showed you earlier. So yeah, you're trying to, stuff doesn't get used if you don't caption it well, because people can't find it, because we have so many images on our database. I mean, that library goes back to, I know back when Farrar and them, I know there's images from then, and I think the last time I looked, there was like 400,000 images or something up there maybe, but it grows all the time. And so yeah, those, you don't know if something's gonna get used. You're trying to determine, okay, is this something that I'd want on a page? And we get a list of agency priorities every year, so we kind of work off that. Those are kind of the assignments we're working off of to go out and get pictures of. But yeah, a lot of the best pictures come when you're going after those things and something else pops up though. But yeah.
Did you start digitally, or were you film when you first started? And did you go to digital kicking and screaming?
I was film, started out film. Pentax K1000 is what I had here at college. That was when we had a dark room in the Klein Center. I actually started in admin, so did work in the dark room. I did some of they had a digital camera there at the Eagle at the time, so played around with it a little bit, but didn't really get into it until later on.
Digital cameras didn't come in until about the 90s, did they?
Yeah, that would have been 96 when I graduated, so that would have been about when the first digital cameras were coming into the Eagle newspaper. I started with film when I worked here at the college. I was still shooting film, and then we got a digital camera here with I remember, what was it? It was an Olympus or something I think we used for a while, and then I ended up buying one. I bought a Canon digital, and after that I didn't go back. I didn't need any more time in the dark room. It was, and it's been a good thing for photography, I think, because it is easy to take photographs and delete them and everything, and you know what you got right away. It's a lot better than the old film days where you go shoot a whole roll of film and then accidentally open the back and lose the back of the camera and lose them all or whatever, or find out your exposure was off for the whole set of them. I did that numerous times, and so it's been good that way, but it's also raised the expectations of photography a lot too, I think. The more of this stuff you get, the higher the expectations get for getting good imagery. Hi, Mary.
Yeah, the mountain lion photos, so those are all trail camera shots?
These are all trail camera shots, yes. I have been able to get a few when I'm out with the researchers, but yeah, these are all trail cam shots.
How long do you leave the camera there, and how often do you go back and check it?
Oh, it depends. I try to get back within 2 weeks, because sometimes you'll have something go weird where it just shoots 500 images for some reason and burns your flashes down. So I try to get out there and check it quite a bit just for that reason, just for the battery's sake. But there have been times when I've gotten busy on other projects, and I haven't gotten back for over a month, and don't know. Sometimes the camera's still been working at that time too, so yeah.
What is your light source on those? Is that a flash or?
Flash units, wired flash units, and they're in a weatherproof housing, and yeah, so you're trying to set the power of each of them and trying to set it up like it's a studio setup, and trying to figure out where the critter might come and get it to do what you want it to do. So.
And it's triggered by the motion of the animal?
Yeah, it's a motion sensor. It's kind of the same like your lights automatic lights that you have outside your house and stuff. It's a lot of that same technology, passive infrared technology stuff. So yeah, there's a outfit in Walt Hill, Nebraska that makes a lot of the components for this. They do it for National Geographic photographers and a lot of others. So yeah, they create a lot of the components. I recently had to rebuild my setup. Had half of it fall under a cliff, fell on top of it, still underneath all that. Yeah, the sandstone. So yeah, I spent quite a bit of the winter rebuilding that setup and just got it put out again. So yeah, in the back there.
What kind of enhancements do you ever do to your photographs, and do you ever use bait?
Yeah, the enhancements, very basic. Usually, we do shoot in raw, so there's a lot of leeway on exposure and stuff. So you can go be 3 stops over or under, but the object is always to try to get an image to look like you would have seen it. That's kind of the guideline that we use, is how you see it is what you try to work for. And yes, on some of these camera trap setups, I'll use like a trapping lure that trappers use. Yeah, it's a bobcat lure, a lot of it that you can order online. I don't know if it helps. Yeah, I think a lot of times these cats are just moving through places. I did have one I put on a cut branch a while back, put some of that on, and a cat actually, I got pictures of the mountain lion where it's rubbing its neck up against it, so kind of cool, but yeah. Yes, sir.
Kind of think based on your subject matter, you get to become an accidental expert in botany and zoology and geology. What have you really gravitated to? What do you enjoy learning or writing about the most?
Yeah, it's funny. So many varied subjects, and it's like I had fun writing about this disc golf story last week, and that, it didn't sound that interesting, but those guys were telling me about thumbers and tomahawks and all these different throws that they do, and I had no idea there was so much to it. But no, when I first started this and was going out and taking pictures, and that's what fascinates. I mean, I hunted and fished growing up and everything, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to birds and different bird species and all that. So once I got the camera and started taking pictures of different birds, and it would be like, what species is that? And it would be like, poor old Mel Ninneman over there, I was emailing him all the time, and he's like, yeah, that's a juvenile robin. It's like a pretty common bird, but so I've learned a lot since then, still got a lot to learn, but it's all fascinating to me. And the plant species, and that's the other, you see a pretty wildflower, and sometimes I'll just walk by anymore and it's like, boy, you're pretty, but I don't know if I want to take the time to get you identified. So you have to, yeah, it's like, but that's fascinating to me too, to learn about some of those plant species and all the wildlife, of course. But yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say with game and parks, and we got conservation partners and Forest Service and all these people, and I got tons of resources out there that I get to work with that, if I have a question about something, they're a phone call away, and I built relationships with them over the years. And so they probably think I'm asking a lot of dumb questions a lot of times, but they are very good and patient with me. And Shelley Steffel's one of them, who I've sent numerous plant photos to through the years, and she's helped me identify. So that's one of the great things about the job, is that I have a lot of great people I work with that know what they're doing. So, yes, sir.
Justin, you had a picture of a lion kitten in the recent Nebraskaland article that you took up on the Ponderosa Wildlife Area. Is there a story behind that wonderful picture?
No, that was during a tagging. Yeah, so we were out tagging kittens, and fortunate that I get to take pictures of them before they get the tags on their ears. So yeah, I went in before everybody else did and got pictures of the kitten in the den. And so yeah, it's fascinating. Those such cute little kittens, they really are, and they sound off. They sound like birds, kind of chirping when they, as you know. So yeah. Yes, sir.
What sort of permit issues should people be aware of? I noticed in the tradition, like with the drones, that there are restrictions on those. Are there any other restrictions that people should be aware of in terms of if they're injured,
Yeah, you know, we do have special occasion permits on Game and Parks property for commercials type stuff. Yeah, that's, as far as wildlife photography goes, I've never heard of anybody being discouraged from that. That's what a lot of our public lands are for, is wildlife, for observing wildlife and such. But, you know, we can't harass wildlife. That's something that I'm very careful about when I'm out. You know, we don't, you can get in trouble for harassing wildlife, and it's just not a good thing to do anyway. So yeah, there's those issues. Yeah, besides that, I'm trying to think what other permit issues there might be, but I'm not thinking of any off the top of my head. Yeah.
One thing I was wondering about was that I noticed that you use blinds a lot. Does that mean that you're going into these areas and you're essentially camping in those areas? Because I know that there's some restrictions.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There are, like on our WMAs, you can, yeah, Greg can help with this more, but I don't think you can have a blind set up overnight, so it's a bring it in the morning sort of thing. So yeah, there's that issue there. You know, see, any public land you go to, you want to look at what regulations are on that before you go to it, and everything's different. Like one of those places you saw me camping, that was a private pasture. I was out there just in the middle of a pasture where the swift fox were, so there were no issues there. I camped. Well, the other one I think was up at Shell Lake, which is camping is allowed there in that area. So I was right by the water there, able to camp. So it just depends on the area, I guess. In the back there.
Your personal recreational time in the outdoors, has it increased or decreased since you've been working in it?
Oh, it's you know, that's one of the most attractive parts of this job, is that I'm able to get out and do some of this stuff, you know. And I suppose maybe in some areas I haven't, you know, maybe my fishing's gone down a little bit, I suppose, since I'm doing all this other stuff, out chasing a lot of other different things. So I can see where that might have changed a little bit, but for the most part, yeah, I've been able to do a lot of fun things outdoors with this job, and so. As long as I'm carrying the camera with me. Yeah. Any others?
Has anybody hit you up for guide service yet?
No. I love to hunt, but I am not what I would call a great hunter, and I think you'd be wasting your money if you were paying me to be a guide. So, yeah, but hey, I'll take your money.
Ice fishing hasn't been very well this year.
This has been the worst winter for ice fishing. Yeah, it's been terrible. Yeah, I got out, I think 2.5 days is what I got out this winter. So yeah, we went out, Sawyer and I went out one day, right there, I think around Thanksgiving, we had that cold snap, and we got a little bit of ice there up at Shell Lake, and went up there and fished on about 3.5 inches of ice, which is the bare minimum that I'll do. It was good ice. We were spread out and carrying very light gear, but yeah. Otherwise, we went to Box Butte on a really cold day, and that's when I lost my cell phone through the hole. That was, so yeah. It just has not been a good ice fishing year at all. So yeah. Anything else? Well, thanks for coming, everybody. It's a wonderful turnout. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Justin.